this is called like from automation to autonomy. And I think we all know, we've already talked about it in some of the panels, right, that AI is moving from like chatbots to agents that can do things. And like, I think just to have like a baseline definition of what an agent is, like we don't need to get into the Oxford English Dictionary version of this, but like an agent to me is like autonomous logic that can control the environment. I use like a Waymo as a good example, right? So I think we all see that like going to autonomy can produce incredible gains in our economy and what we do at work, et cetera. And so what we did was pull together an incredible panel of some agent builders, and I'll introduce everyone in a second, as well as some CISOs who are responsible for implementing, securing, and governing these things that are entering the enterprise. And so, we might have a little bit of hype, but we're going to try to cut through that and want to talk about like the real value that AI and agents are bringing today, and then what are the barriers that we need to cut across, which we talked about a little bit already, to unleash the agentic future that we all really want. So I'm going to introduce Andy Black here. He's the CEO of Kovvr, Kovvr.ai. He's tackling like one of the biggest barriers for companies selling into regulated industries and the government, which is the multi-year, multi-million-dollar nightmare of compliance frameworks like FedRAMP and others. And so Kovvr is an AI native platform that automates that complex compliance and makes it magically easy and parses the evidence, and he can talk more about it, but generating audit-ready documentation like in a fraction of the time. What truly could take years can be done now, and you'll get into that, and done very quickly. On the other end, we've got Josh Ray. He's the CEO of Blackwire Labs, which is a sponsor here. And by the way, these guys are both alums of the Hack Factory. Shout out to the Hack Factory. Blackwire is an agentic graph platform, and what they do is deliver trusted expertise for GRC, training and simulation, threat and vulnerability management. They have cross-disciplinary agents that are vetted on, are trained on like vetted security information, and Joshua can talk a little bit more about that. And what that allows us to do, just sort of like we heard on the space shuttle of the, what Booz had deployed with like the LLM that was ragged with all the stuff on the space station. Blackwire Labs is that for security teams and allows them to, understand what's going on very quickly and turn analysis that can take weeks into seconds, minutes, very quick. And Blackwire is a really good example of something that's transforming from co-pilots into agents that can act. And so then we've got these two guys in the middle of the Oreo sandwich here. Tom Quinn is right there. He's CISO at T. Rowe Price. You may have heard of it. He brings a really critical viewpoint. Like, he's going to be awesome, and you'll see why. From as he thinks about agents from one of the world's most highly regulated financial firms. That's one of the largest also. And finally, David Ginn, who's CISO at Johnson Controls, JCI. David has like a deep architecture background and has done all kinds of things in his career that. And he's got, like, as we've been chatting, like a really pragmatic view of, how, of securing like a massive global industrial company. And, David also has to think about IT and OT and how agents are playing into that as well. So I think we have a really good mix of folks. And I'm going to kick it off with talking about like the value layer. Like, what value are we getting from agents and AI today? And so Andy and Josh, I'm going to start with you guys. As I briefly mentioned, you guys are building AI-enabled systems, agentic systems. Can you each like give us just a brief description of where you see sort of the breakthrough value that you're getting from agents and that you're delivering to your customers today, and why they're super excited to work with you? And I don't know, Josh, why don't you go first, and then Andy.
You want me to go first?
Go first.
Is this working?
Is that working?
Test. Okay.
Mic check.
There we go.
Yeah.
So I think my favorite story, Josh, has to do with a CTO in the health tech space. And it was right around Christmas of last year. One of his employees was targeted with a business email compromise attack. Just flooded the inbox of this employee with thousands of emails. And, he first was like, oh, this must be an IT misconfiguration. And he was a pretty technical CTO and had a staff of, 2 or 3 developers. I think they were probably about 30 mil in revenue. So kind of that mid-tier Fortune 500 to 5,000. Really, really kind of involved in kind of product development and kind of taking the product to market. So that was his sole focus. Didn't have a security team on staff. Gets this attack, and the first thing he did was actually go to like ChatGPT and was like, hey, what am I seeing type of thing. And it said, it could be this, misconfiguration of, your email server, or you could be seeing an attack. As soon as he realized that, he was able to kind of go into our platform, Blackwire, typed in kind of what he was doing, and he said the tone and tenor of the platform actually changed when he said, I'm actively having an incident. Now, what was really cool is that he was actually able to diagnose, remediate it, and it was giving him not only step-by-step guidance, but actually kind of pointing him in very specific directions, like go look halfway through the emails and you're going to find where they're doing the account takeover and all that stuff. And he was able to get from identification to remediation to actually having the employee contact the bank in less than 3 hours. Now, I've been doing threat ops for 30 years, and I've never seen that speed from identification and remediation with like no security staff at all.
Yeah,
and the cool thing was it was a feel-good story because you're helping, a company that basically doesn't have those resources to be able to bring to bear to remediate an attack that would have, otherwise destroyed Christmas.
Yeah, that's spot on. And like we talked a little bit earlier today, right, about the, these onesies and twosies attacks against these smaller organizations that are really wreaking havoc. And so, democratizing, David has a team of size of 200, right? Like, it's really incredible, like what the platform's capable of. Andy.
I think there are a lot of cool areas. I wish I could give a story quite as cool as what Josh just said, but I'll give it sort of a more mundane one. Observability is an area that we have found a lot of value and power in. So if you think about compliance, let's say you've got 400, 600 different controls that you got to develop and document and prove value to, but your CI/CD team or your DevOps team keeps publishing new content. Maybe you switch cloud providers, right? There's change somewhere across those hundreds of controls. Where does that data actually live, right? So we've been talking for the past 10 or 15 years about data as a strategic asset. We continue to struggle with it. Data dictionaries are a problem. Well, there's a real problem in figuring out, like, okay, what changed in my environment, more than configuration drift, but true compliance drift? How do I go find that information and bring it back to me in a meaningful, powerful way? Agents have been super powerful for us because you can build an agent to be infrastructure and sort of tech stack agnostic and be responsive to changes in the environment. So if your Kanban, if your continuous monitoring fails a check, it can trigger an agent to go say, okay, go check this thing out for me and bring back the results of a scan, the results of something, and continuously populate in a way that, traditionally, I think to Josh's point, the OODA cycle on that would have been days or weeks, where we can now measure it in seconds and minutes.
Yeah, that's really incredible, and I think speaks to a lot of the speed that we hope to get from this. By the way, I wish I could pull off those cowboy boots.
I was going to say bonus points for incorporating OODA into your topic.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, right.
We're here for OODA. I want to ask like Tom and David, I see you guys nodding your heads. Oh, this is cool. What these guys are doing. I'd love to hear each of your perspective on I guess promising use cases. Either AI systems or agents, maybe that you may not be actively deploying, but that you're either thinking about or seriously exploring, and what potential benefits are really driving that. And maybe David, you go first, and then Tom.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know Johnson Controls, I think the easiest way I describe Johnson Controls to people is we're a commercial building management company, and I think we have really 3 distinct businesses. We build products that are building controllers or HVAC, big chillers in data centers and schools and hospitals. So we've got the hardware piece of it. We've got a digital business that is the SaaS and software products that manage that hardware and make it more useful and gain insights from it. And then we have 40,000 team members that are that do field install and maintenance. And so if you think about the scale of that workforce, any efficiency you can gain in a workforce of 40,000 people that is out servicing your customers is a huge opportunity. And so every minute they spend on administrative tasks or looking through manuals or calling their colleagues to try and figure out how to do something, that's the immediate use case we went to, was how can we make this team of 40,000 people more efficient?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it's just worth calling out, and then Tom, I want to hear, but maybe you could just talk for 30 seconds, David, on, the goal here is not to reduce that force of 40,000 people down to 20,000. Like, there
Correct.
is enough work that remains undone that this unleashes, greater productivity gains.
Yeah, not to be sort of blunt about it, but those people generate revenue. They don't generate revenue when they're doing administrative tasks. They generate revenue when they're fixing or installing chillers or building controllers or doing installs or selling, cross-selling, upselling, all of those things they do, and the real value is not the administrative tasks they do. So they're happy for us to sit in front of the whiteboard and come up with ways that we can save them time with Gen AI, with AI.
Yeah, I just really like that. It's like, we're increasing delivery of customer value rather than just purely efficiency gains.
Yeah.
Tom, would love to hear your thoughts on, what you're seeing as maybe some early potential use cases, and where you might see some short-term impact if you were able to, or what you're focused on right now.
Yeah, so I'd like to show two use cases, one for my team and then one for my firm. So for my team, we've been practicing free cash flow practices for a decade. I love that causes silence in the room. So we, as a principle, we modernize our technology, we automate and orchestrate tasks and activities, data-led insights, and that's a flywheel for us for free cash flow. We've been doing, I think they call it, the cool kids may call it alert engineering. We've been doing that for quite some time. A good part of the reason why we do that, and shift left is another thing I think the cool kids say too, it's to make better jobs for our employees. So we talked about there's more than enough work, but trusted people who know your environment, inculcated like you want them to be inculcated, know what you want to get done. You can, again, trust them. Those are crucial, important assets to have. And we've been in the cybersecurity space, right? We've been using AI. I think somebody was talking about Mars before, right? Like AI is on Mars. We've been using AI, like old AI, ML, and those kind of things for a long time in the technologies that we have had to fight things. The reason why I mention that is we've been kind of practicing the benefits of what AI can do for us for a while. And I think we're in a pretty good position to even accelerate that now. Because what we're being asked to do is even more, and it's more than just do more with less. I mean, we're really asked to do a lot more. And part of my side hustle at work is business process reengineering. So we have lots of access, we have lots of data, and we're practiced at making insight from data and sharing that with people. So we model the environment pretty regularly. Most of my team is data people. We have cyber people too. But being able to do something with data is valuable. And one of those things is to describe what the business is actually doing with technology. So, so that's one use case. I think AI is going to accelerate our ability to actually map the business to the technology that they're using and give them insight about actually how they're doing it so they can be more efficient, effective, and alike. Second use case we have, and I'll make this much shorter, we're active manager. Our investors and research teams are some of the best in the world. They take lots of data, lots of time series data, and lots of interview data. We have that proprietary information in a bunch of very arcane data stores, and it's hard for the research team to gain access to it, our investors to get access to it. AI, we're finding, is effective search, and it works. Where the models are really good, there's use cases, like if it's very straightforward for what you're asking to do, models in general work pretty good, and smart people and good tech and good models, awesome. But we're applying it directly to have our investors make better decisions faster, and it's certainly to enable them. It's certainly not to reduce people.
Yeah, so I think that like what I'm hearing from both of you too is also like, there's this narrative that we're here to like eliminate people and get at the efficiency gains, but it sounds like there's competitive advantage to be had by empowering your workforce with agents and finding alpha, whatever that is,
Yeah.
and generating more upsells because I don't have to do paperwork. And
Can I pile on?
yeah, of course.
Yeah, so we like every AI company, like, oh, you're taking jobs. We actually view the world as you can do more with less or you can do more with more. And so we think in this case, over the past 10 years or so, DevOps has become the standard for software delivery, which has increased the release velocity of not just net new software products and capabilities, but new branches hitting prod, right? So you just have more stuff coming to the digital baseline than ever before. You have more change in the baseline on the non-digital parts like the physical infrastructure, right? You're moving from Amazon to Azure, Azure to something else. And so there's like changes becoming a constant. How do you maintain that baseline, that understanding, that posture? If you think that cutting your headcount is the best way to maintain your visibility, you're probably, on our view, you're not really thinking about the problem in the right way. It's better to provide leverage to that team and let them create agility, adaptability, and ultimately, to your point, revenue, scale, do more, support more customers. That's actually the better outcome.
No, go ahead, Josh. Like pull that thread. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really important. So we're seeing, talking to all our clients, they're getting tremendous amount of pressure, downward pressure from the business to say, how are we using AI? How are we driving efficiency gains? How are we driving cost takeout, value creation, all the words? And what we're actually seeing, and this might be a little bit provocative, is that it's not so much about eliminating jobs or cutting people, it's where are we going to focus the resources to get the most return, right? So, for instance, I was having a conversation with a CIO for a large county government, and we showed him some things that we were doing around analysis of a variety of their different policies and how they align to different frameworks and standards and a gap analysis type of thing. And then we were able to just rewrite those policies in line with Virginia and all the different statutes that had to do it. And we did about 5 or 6 on the call, and he was like, well, now I don't have to hire that $130,000 to $180,000 a year person. Now, you could look at that and say, well, we're eliminating jobs, or you could look at that and say, well, now that CIO has the freedom to say, where am I going to spend that money to actually get the most return, or where that's going to help the county or help citizen data protection more effectively, you know what I mean? So I think that it's a bit of a misnomer when you talk about taking jobs. I mean, the printing press took jobs, but people adapt over time, and you kind of have to in that respect.
I just want to build on that too. It's like we did an interview with the CFO for OpenAI, and one of the things that she had mentioned was how they were applying that to do the quarterly reports, how they were doing that for SOC 1, SOC 2, SOCs, attestations and the like. So, those are things that probably take months or weeks, and now they're taking days or hours to get done. That creates space and time. And that space and time is, and you were getting right at it, creating space and time is magic. I mean, that's what you want to do, and knowing that you can have that kind of help allows you to work on the next thing that you need to. You still need to read the report, you still need to make sure you're signing off on it, but anything that can gain that kind of efficiency for the people that you have is going to be great.
And how much, I mean, just, David and Tom, like, can you say that for your human capital, but even for your technology investments, are you getting the most value out of every single product that you ever, bought? I think there's a lot to be said for how do you actually, really drive the most value out of the tooling that you already have as well.
Yeah, I would agree
Not
with
just the
that.
people that are tools, but the tools. That,
Yeah, I agree.
No, that was great. I want to, I'm going to try to break this up into a few thirds. And I also want to leave time for some questions at the end, because I know there's probably some good questions in there. And Ken and Shish Shoshana, don't ask questions that are too hard. All right. So we sort of just talked about the value layer, and I think we heard that there is value. It's not all hype. People are actually finding, legitimate use cases with value from this, the magic of AI. But I do want to talk about, this adoption layer. Like, what are like the barriers to broader agency, right? Like making these things, making agents more agentic, so to speak, and making them more autonomous. And I think we've talked a little bit about it today. There's friction, right? Like the more autonomy I give an agent, like there's this trust paradox, right? Like, oh, it can do all these things, but that's really scary. Especially when you might be, able to do destructive actions. And so I'd be interested to go down like the whole panel from each of your perspectives on what you see as like really the biggest barrier to driving more autonomy. Is it technical? Is it organizational? Is it cultural? All of the above? And what is preventing enterprises from giving agents greater agency and autonomy over critical systems? And we can just go down the line. I don't know if Andy, you'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. So I used to give like an hour and a half brief on this when I was at Amazon, so I'll just pick a couple quick things here. I think there's a couple things. One is people confuse the technology with the decisions that need to be made. And so it's like, oh, AI is doing it, therefore it's totally different. Like, well, not necessarily. And so where that comes into is this idea of like, is the human in the loop or on the loop? Those conversations are still as real today. I think the big question is, for certain types of decisions, whether it's because it's speed and critical, it's something that needs to be fixed immediately, and so we'll take a little more risk on that to make sure that we're not going to sink the boat. And other things that require more deliberation. I think for us, what we've tried to do is make sure that for the critical decisions, think like the attestation on your cyber posture, the human is still the one doing the attestation on that. But there are certain other like track 1, track 2 type of decisions that maybe can be agentic and can be adopted. All of that sort of nets out to BPR, right? Business process reengineering, where you move from job shop, waterfall, very structured, slow, laborious processes to continuous stream. That's where you get big organizations say, okay, like we're going to go on this journey, but now we're talking about, to your point, 40,000 people that need to work differently. That doesn't happen overnight. The technology is actually the easy part. The people or the process is the hard part.
Yeah, I agree with the people side. I'll talk about that in a second. But I think my biggest frustration as a technologist and as a CISO is just the baby's not born yet, right? We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know, it's not barely ready to secure. Like last year, nobody in this room was talking about MCP servers. Now it's like you cannot go 1 hour without talking about securing MCP servers or who released their newest integration with a secure MCP server, whatever, right? So and it's moving faster than anything we've seen before, right? Technology is not developed as fast as it is today with AI, and with the amount of investment, with the capability that it brings, it's just a moving target all the time. And so staying plugged in with the business, staying plugged in with all of your IT peers, and just understanding like what is happening around us, where is it coming from, and what do I need to do to secure it? What do I need to do it to secure it? People like you are still working on kind of the solution to that. I think we have to just be okay with taking a little bit of risk, understanding what that risk is, and then enabling the use case. I haven't said no to a use case yet. Not that I'm not sure I would be allowed to say no to a use case, to be honest with you. But yeah, it's just knowing about it and understanding kind of what are the risks, what are the threats, and accepting that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tom?
So in similar vein, I've not said no. That has caused a lot of angst with my colleagues in legal, compliance, and audit. And what I've often said to them is like, you're more than welcome to say no. And that also puts a fine point onto something. So what I see is and we talked, I think earlier about fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I think that there's a good bit of that. I think if people aren't grounded enough in the technology facts, and I can't remember who said that earlier, so I'm just quoting them, But being grounded in technology facts is really important to understand what it probably is and probably isn't. Don't need to be a cyber SME, whatever that means. You don't need to be a tech SME, whatever that means. But you need to know enough about the capabilities that you're interacting with. But from an adoption perspective, one of the things I find is that many people want to practice aspirational AI, and very few people want to practice perspirational AI. And one of my thoughts about that is, like, why do you have people who are called technology people or CISOs in between you, business owner, and the data you have? Like, why are we in the middle of any of that? Like, we should remove friction across the board. Like, don't you, and this is also a really good question, rhetorical for sure, like, don't you own the data? And don't you know what it's supposed to be used for? Very rhetorical. And and I think about this by UAT, if people are familiar with that phrase, user acceptance testing. Like, why am I in the middle of your user acceptance testing? You test it all you want, and you user accept it all you want. And I think there really is a big paradigm shift, because if AI achieves real change opportunity at our firms or our country or our societies or governments, it's the SMEs, it's the experts, like, of the business process are going to be enabled through it. And sure, guardrails, whatever that means. I think that there's certainly people up here building AI safety tools, and I think that makes sense. But I think it really is getting everyone's mind in the frame that they've got to practice perspirational AI, and we really do need a lot more people. I'd love, by the way, I really I was hoping that Matt or Bob would give out those quantum sensors. I appreciate Bob's book out there, but the quantum sensor was pretty cool. But we need to be giving that equivalent to all the people at the company, or schools or whatever, AI equivalents to that, and so that they're prepared for it. So.
Yeah, well said. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, no, I like being at the end when all the good things are said. I like the fact that you said that perspiration. That's a quotable thing. I'm going to use that. And I do think that it very much reminds me of kind of the early days of when SIM was coming on board, right? And you had your security engineers, and they were writing their log parsers and comparing it with what the vendor was saying. Is like, well, my parser caught this, and the SIM didn't, catch this, and then, the product manager was like, okay, took a bunch of notes, and then a week later, he's like, all of the things you said, our product now does it and does it better. You know what I mean? And eventually, that trust has started to be built, right? And then what happens is those same engineers become, focused on the broader TTPs of the threats, and then, SOAR and orchestration kind of comes around, and so I think, it's really about every step of the journey, kind of establishing that trust, and from a vendor standpoint, being very transparent as far as what you're doing, and this is why the work that you're doing, Josh, is so critical, because as we kind of break into the adoption of this, it's really, I think it's on the commercial folks not to oversell the hype, right, and be very pragmatic about what are the specific use cases, when do you want to turn on action, when do you probably want to have a human in the loop to do that, and then demonstrating kind of along that that journey, what you can and can't do, and just like anything else, I mean, at the very basis, this is a mission that is established with trust and established with relationships, and the business relationship with technology shouldn't be any different.
Yeah, no, well said. And what I heard is that there's a mix here of technical, organizational, and cultural things that need to change to get these things, get Waymos driving around the enterprise. I have a few follow-up questions. David, when you think about, you haven't said no to a use case yet. Someone's going to come with something of there's this vat of acid that this agent wants to control. I guess when you think about giving more meaningful autonomy and meaningful access to, like you said, I have complex, you have what did you say, 740 years of technical debt? Like, I guess like
140 years, but yes.
Oh, sorry, okay. That's okay.
Yeah, good enough.
It's, how much meaningful life is that? But
Fully depreciated.
what do you see as like being like the big challenge there, like integration wise, and like I guess like as you think about getting access, like giving the agent access to things, and or is that like something that you don't want to even think about now?
I think we have a little bit of time to get there. I think, some of our products have a life safety component to them, right? So we are going to be very slow and very careful about letting an AI agent make any decisions about any of those systems, right? We're not going to replace the people that are monitoring our fire alarms with agents until we know dang well that it can be done and done well without any risk to our customers. The good news, though, is that people are thinking about it, and there's so many use cases that aren't super risky that I think we have time to prove it out without accepting too much risk, because we can show the value, we can show the progress, we can show the learning without focusing on those use cases. And to be honest with you, some of those use cases probably aren't the biggest revenue generators or efficiency generators anyway. We've already had, machine learning algorithms checking for, valves and building sensors and chiller vibrations and things like that for a long, long time. We've been doing that in manufacturing for, 10, 15 years at least, if not longer than that. And so, I think some of those will just be good enough for now. And there's plenty of things to work on that are low-ish risk, high value.
Yeah, okay. No, well said. So low risk, high reward, and that makes sense. Tom, you and I share a love of movie quotes. In some of our conversations, you brought up like war games, which I think probably everyone here has seen 47 times. What keeps you up at night more when it comes to like agents? Is it like, an external, the Chinese hijacking an agent and doing a bad thing, or more like, agentic misalignment or emergent behavior where, the agent decides to play global thermonuclear war just because it sounds like a fun game,
Yes. I think like from a pilot, we're talking about agency for agentic technology. Is it really that worse than a human making a mistake? Is it that worse than an outsourced contractor who's making 10 cents on the dollar for them making a mistake? Really a question, right? Not a statement at all. So I think there's a balance there too. But I do agree about the war games. Like, the agent may not know, right? Anthropomorphically, right? The agent may not know what it's doing. And I think there has to be, and I think earlier they were talking about agents checking agents. I do think that it's going to be important to have some kind of, and I think the way you mentioned that, David, about safety protocols, or when there really is a life opportunity there, having those kinds of fire breaks or fire door concepts, or was it for stock trading, and it escapes me right now for when it.
Yeah, circuit. Whatever.
Yes, circuit breakers. Yeah. I think it just makes sense to do that, and we already have use cases where we have that kind of technology baked in. Maybe it can't be baked into the AI model. Maybe, right? Maybe it can. But having something, right, that you've got an ability to say, listen, I'm not going to have the temperature go below 34 degrees in a home, right? Some kind of contextual thing, and I think my Nest thermostat has something like that. Like, it has an emergency kick on. I think we're going to have those safety parameters baked in, and how it gets done to be determined, and whether or not it looks like the Will Smith iRobot, thing, like whether the 3 laws of robot, like don't kill me, don't kill me, and don't kill me. I think those are all good ones. Yeah. We're going to have to learn that, and I think unfortunately, right, I think we're going to have to they're going to have to be losses, and those losses are going to help us decide where those things get in. But hopefully we'll we'll put some of those safety checks in.
Yeah, and I'll make a shout out to Ken Huang, sitting right there, who's got an awesome book called Securing Agentic AI, which deals with a lot of what you're getting at. And Shoshana's also, Cox right there, has also been writing a lot about this. And I'm building, deterministic behavioral controls. Like, how do we make sure the Waymo always stops at a red light 100% of the time? It has to be, right? Like, so you're spot on there. Josh, from what you're talking to customers, what are they asking for that maybe you feel you can't fully deliver safely yet? That, either they don't have the governance there, or we're not, we might take on liability that we don't want. Is there anything that folks want, but it's just we're not quite there yet?
Yeah, I think when you get down to that very tactical tier of some of that blocking and tackling stuff, or even specific signature creation, we can do that type of stuff, but do you want to have that completely autonomous, right? And I think those are some of the things where you're looking at an instance, and not that anybody here has ever done something to block a major domain for the company to make money or anything like that. But in the instance where you kind of shut something off, or you stop something, or put something on a block list that doesn't belong there, and an agent is responsible for doing something like that, and I thought it was a C2, but it turns out that's one of our really big moneymaker domains type of thing. Yeah, exactly. Amazon East Coast. Yeah. So those types of things I think are really important to kind of get right. And then when you're talking about signature creation specific to a company's tech stack, right? Whether, depending on what the variety of different types of threats are, you can provide some really, really strong, get them 85 to 90% of the way there, which is, something that we do. But that should go into a, CI/CD kind of review process. That should be something that, other people look at as, before it actually gets implemented into production. And I just think that's what you would do with your normal employees. That's how you should kind of, treat this. Now, at some point, maybe it gets to a point where it's, you trust it and you feel like, hey, this is, something I can just go and deploy. Great, but that's a cultural and a business decision more than a product decision.
But just to that point, and we were talking about thermonuclear war, right? We were talking about missile launching, and then not hyperscaler, but hyper glide bodies, fast rocket things. And
Hypersonic?
Yes, hypersonic. Thank you. And I was saying before, sometimes I can't remember words properly. My kids understand where I'm getting at, and we were saying
we're vibing.
Yes,
we get it.
hypersonic, right? So
yeah.
But speaking about movies, I think about this for Hunt for Red October, right? You could have all these safety protocols, and then somebody gets angry, and it's how come you can't make my domain work? And they go, take the safety protocol off, and then you get blown up, right, with a torpedo. So I think it's the human, right, maybe, right, that we've got to be mindful of. And you mentioned something about CI/CD pipeline, and I think it's important, but I think in some cases, and this is the business process mapping, that I think the business teams have to really be involved in setting some of the automated controls. Mm. There could be situations, right, it's more than just a tech thing to do. It's we're going to turn the business off. And making sure, right, that the business teams have agency, and then understanding there are parameters where we're just not going to allow you to trade. You may not even see it, but there are parameters, and you have to sign off on it, because otherwise we're just going to melt the hardware, right? We're just going to get infected, and that's okay. So be it. But you got to realize that that's your decision, right? That's where you want to draw the line, and for some cases, for financial services firms, better to be in the market and have I can't even say these words, but better to be in the market and have bad stuff going on than not be in the market. That's a fine risk decision to make. Security people, tech people should not be making those kinds of decisions, and you've got to phrase it in a way, and you make sure that you've got the right governance in place so that people are making those outcomes.
No, well said. And I want to,
let me just close that topic out.
Please.
So when I was running the ad business at Amazon, I would spend a lot of time with customers, particularly national security, talking about kind of this issue. And a lot of times the advice I would give is, first and foremost, actually don't start with the technology, because that can like steer you in a really dangerous direction. I think Josh was giving us a clue on this. If the decision, like every organization is unique, decisions should be made based upon heuristics around risk that fit the organization's profile. Johnson Controls is a totally different risk profile than, say, like Facebook and Meta. Put another way, like we have been making these decisions around things like Aegis defense systems versus signature strikes for years. The criteria for the decision materially different in each case. Yep. And the use of the technology, the employment of the decision-making cycle, the OODA loop, to use it twice, was quite different. And so the tolerance for a signature strike on a high-value target is completely different than we might lose a battle group if we don't respond in half a second. I mean, so like you do have to, like, everyone likes to jump to the extreme circumstances, but I think the only thing that I would caution is that can take you down kind of a non-heuristic, non-sort of core principles, core tenets point, when your risk analysis should reflect your business first and the technology second. The only thing that does make the technology a little bit different is agents can do things that technology previously couldn't do, right? And so you just have a new category of use cases, like you don't have to fly somebody to South Africa anymore at whatever, $300,000 per TDY to go turn a wrench. You might be able to do that with an agentic system. That's a use case that just didn't exist before. Yeah. But it shouldn't necessarily change the risk analysis from the risk owner.
Yeah, no, and what I'm hearing is like, the agent needs to be contextualized in the situation that it's in, and the same agent might have different policies around it, depending on the use case, which team is using it, which organization it is, what the risk tolerances of the organizations are. And the way I think of it is like, a Waymo in San Francisco might have to have different policies than a Waymo in Delhi to get around.
I think someone should build the company that allows us to think about agentic risk.
No, but and I always want to call out Jason Garman over there also, who's at AWS, and we were at the Offensive AI conference a couple weeks ago, and there was just a good point about, Josh, what you were saying. There is like so much value to having meaningful autonomy of finding the vuln, writing the patch, deploying it without, and just like that just goes. And we're not quite there yet, but like there would be tons of value to
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, right, so you've got a new piece of intelligence that comes into your observation space, right? To be able to say, okay, like, here's the TTPs that the threat is using, here are the countermeasures, here's the technical mitigations that you should employ, here's how it impacts your, CIS control stack, and then would you like me to write a, playbook to update your incident response plan? Like, those are all really, really easy things, that we do that I think are just, naturally kind of course of action types of things that you would do during your normal kind of ops tempo. And what it does is it actually takes that piece of intelligence, who the intel analyst typically couldn't do all of those things because the skill sets are so completely different from a security engineering standpoint or a third-party risk standpoint, to actually apply that intelligence, appropriately.
Yeah, no, well said.
But
Okay.
the one thing about patching, though, is patching is the easiest thing to do in the world. What's hard is to do regression testing. And what I find is that because nobody has any, maybe not nobody, but we talk about H-bomb, S-bomb, X-bomb, and then dependency mappings, right, and how your systems actually operate. If AI knows, it's like, listen, I know I'm 3 standard deviations assured that I found something, I know I can fix it, 3 standard deviation confidence that I can make this change and will have 0 impact, except for the lunch menu system. Like, I'm going. Like, do that now. So I think where that could speed up the analyst doing that, but if that could also speed up the impact assessment for it, because that's a complicated set of things, the AI could be super helpful for that.
Yeah. No, well said. Okay, I want to move to the future. So, David, you made this point, right? Like, MCP is not even a year old, right? A year ago, we wouldn't be talking about coding agents or any of these things, and things are happening really fast. I'd be interested, like, and maybe start with, like, maybe Andy and Josh, like, as you guys think about, what you're building and your companies, is there a moonshot, like 5 years from now, right? Like, what do you see, like, an amazing moonshot thing that you would want to see achieved that you could do that, your agent is doing for a customer in 5 years that, like, you're just not, it's still a pipe dream today?
Yeah, I would say dynamically configurable compliance based on sovereignties. As you are, okay, winning on that comment.
Yeah, exactly.
Should build that, Andy.
Well, it's funny. So it kind of ties together a couple points here. When we started the company, we thought we'd spend the entire time trying to convince people that AI should write your SSP, right? Like, just let AI do the basics. And it turned out people were a lot more comfortable than we were expecting, which has been great for business. But the vision has not been like, we can build SSPs, isn't that an amazing trick? It's actually to be able to build and maintain compliance as a dynamic, continually updated. 10 years ago, we were talking about self-healing systems. It's kind of in that vein of, can we build a reinforcement loop, a reinforcement mechanism, and actually bring security into DevOps, right? So that it is actually incorporated into that cycle. I think, technically speaking, it's actually not that difficult anymore. I think now it's about adoption and sitting down and wiring things up. So no, I think that's within the next couple of years.
All right, within spitting distance, I like that. Go ahead, Josh. What's your moonshot?
Yeah, continuous compliance is awesome. I think that's achievable. I think where we really want to get to is a point where we're not talking about AI agents, and that it just becomes part of the fabric of what we do. So maybe a little bit more strategic in nature, right? So these are the things that, like, we of course we have agents, and of course they work kind of side by side, and they're part of our workforce, and they're incorporated into everything. Kind of like, of course I used the GPS to get here this morning. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a normal course of like a feature of a capability that we use every single day. Because I mean, it's kind of tiresome to talk about all the time, but in the sense that it's cool, but it's also like, there's a massive amounts of hype. So when I have conversations with folks like David and Tom, it's kind of like, what can you actually do, right? What's the value that you're actually bringing? So I think when we can actually get to a point where there is an ability to kind of continuously monitor somebody's technology stack and solve or at least significantly impact the third-party risk issue. I mean, from SBOM to XBOM, but also kind of understanding more, hey, your supplier just got, that your key supplier just got breached. What are the 5 things that you need to do? And like put those countermeasures in place. Like, I think that's a really nice panacea and something that's very achievable in the next, 1 to 2 years.
Nice. Same kind of question like Tom and David, like, I guess from your perspective within your organizations, and maybe Tom, will start with you, just like, are there certain transformative outcomes that, like, in the next several years you feel like you would love to see achieved, in a leading global investment firm?
I really like the dynamic legal entity compliance-y thing there. I would think that AI agent contract discussion, I don't think humans should be involved in that in general. AI agent compliance, like there should be an SEC, Singapore Monetary Authority agent, right, that should be able to run. There should be a EU data privacy agent that should run and dynamically give you an understanding of what's going on. You should be able to understand, what your tax breaks are, and that's dynamically updated all the time, for you. So how the company runs, not the products, not like, hey, we're gonna deploy next gen, Johnson Controls capability here. But I mean how the guts of the company run, like HR, no offense to HR professionals or lawyers or anything else, but those feel to me like real ways to take friction out, get consistency in, and then get real-time answers for people at a lower price point. And if you can map that to industries, so this is how financial services does it, this is how the DIB does it, this is how healthcare does it, because their uniqueness is in those kind of models and how you do compliance, I think we're going to start getting parts of the way there for some of those things.
Very cool. David? Acid? Vats of acid?
Yeah, all of that. I mean, I love the compliance things. Like every CISO hates doing the work associated with third-party risk assessments, with compliance. Nobody that works on those teams likes to do the massive amounts of clerical work that it takes. They like to think about risk. They like to think about achieving new certifications or new compliance, creating capability in the business. All of the rest of it is like busy work you have to do to achieve the outcome. So if we could save those people the busy work and let them go work on the important things, that would be awesome. I would love to have my SOC orchestrating hundreds of defender agents, everything from taking the intel, doing the hunt, executing the countermeasures, deploying the patch, all that stuff. We're never going to have enough security analysts, and so anything we can do to automate those things, I think will be awesome. I think, I'm really hoping that we see some step function change in education and training. I do think there's a little bit of what I call AI anxiety amongst the teams. The CIOs talking about it, the CEO talking about it, the CISO talks about it. But like what do I do with it today in my job today? I think being able to help people come move up the change curve and learn, and I think it's really a mindset shift. Matt said, one thing that really stood out to me that Matt said this morning was just sort of, you work with the agent on almost everything you do, and that really struck a chord with me because I do it all day long every day, and I didn't do that a year ago. As a matter of fact, a year and a half ago, I told Microsoft how trash Copilot was. Today, I use it for everything. The research agents in there search the web plus my Office graph and give me really good information about the problems I'm trying to solve. I took a picture of a note card that had a bunch of dates on it the other day and asked Copilot to put it on my calendar, and it worked. That probably saved me 20 minutes right there. So, I think I'd love to see those big, step function changes in the way we work, but I also think like the little things we do are going to stack up to be big changes in the way we do things every day. Like who drives anywhere without GPS turned on? Even if you know how to get there, it's going to give you the traffic alert so you can go around the traffic, right?
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think it's, you're making a great point that, like, even the technology today, like, if it stopped, people say this, right? Like, if it stopped developing, the models didn't get better, there's so much, like, untapped value that we can get. Yes, MIT report, 95% of things are failing, yada, 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 but it's like, what's the ROI of the internet at work? You know what I mean? It's like, go measure that. So,
exactly.
So, you guys, Tom, you went, right? Like you said, oh, you guys all went, all right. So we have about like 5 minutes or so left that I just want to save for, questions, and I can ask more questions if no one has any, but anyone have questions for these guys while you got them? Jason.
I'm just kind of curious from a risk management perspective, right? We heard earlier today about a paradigm shift into more probabilistic thinking. And so typically when we think of technology, we have a certainty around it. It's a deterministic system as opposed to people and processes, right? Now we have a technology where that flips it on its head, and now we need to think about probabilistic outcomes in our technology as well as everywhere else. How does that influence your risk management and your thought process around that? And how does that impact your decision making?
Yeah, non-determinism. How does that change your risk calculus?
The way I'm approaching it's a little bit maybe simple is just, the most important thing to me right now is the governance and having the inventory, making sure everybody knows what they need to do to deploy a new use case, buy a new thing, open up a website, whatever the agent is, understanding what it is. Then we can do the testing, the threat modeling, the examining of the use case, all the things we would probably normally do for any new technology, but like just having the inventory to me and having an engaged sort of technical team that's working with the business is, to me, the most important thing there.
I agree, and I think most risk managers, they're used to making decisions with incomplete knowledge, and I don't know that it's that different. It is different, but I don't know that it's that different. I think, just as we said before, it's like, hey, I use GPS to get here. Who wouldn't be, I don't know, some other example like that before. I think this is going to give people, another tool plus their judgment to say, yes, we're going to go. Or if the decision is like, listen, it's 32% likely that something will happen, like was it like Space Shuttle Challenger, right? With all those kind of things when the O-ring failed. I hope what it is like, listen, these numbers don't add up. That I hope that kind of like low probability, when you want to make that decision, just forces like, we got to talk more about it. So I think maybe we need to change it a little bit, but maybe we can adapt I think that we can adapt to that model.
Yeah,
Great question.
Great question. Very specific answer. Risk as threat, vulnerability, and impact don't materially change, right? You still have to do your risk analysis, but the cost of checks is going down significantly. So meaning, if you do think it's a more dynamic outcome, then do more checks. And those checks don't have to be automatic, meaning 1 + 2 = 3 of the past. Now it can actually be much more cognitive in nature, much more qualitative in nature. I'll give you a very specific example. Right now, if you were to do a gap assessment against FedRAMP moderate, you're going to spend $100,000 to $300,000 on your system. We can do a 53A based audit on your system at the same time. So in as little as 15 minutes, you can build your entire package plus have it assessed. Like that, and you can do that as frequently as you like, right? Because the system can now do this. So I would say like it's more on the audit and inspection side is where you're going to see more change than on the risk analysis or the risk sort of posture assessment side.
Yeah, it's a great question, and just to throw in my thoughts, because why not? I think you guys said it right. Like I think of it very much like we have to know who we're onboarding. What is this agent supposed to do? Is it the intern with photocopy access where the risk is low, or is it the CFO who can steal money, and we put different checks and different behavioral controls around those things. And so I think that's how we deal with the non-determinism in humans. And I think it's like, I've been saying this to anyone who's around me, but like, we say assume breach and do your security. It's like assume prompt inject. What's the worst that can happen? And if you're an intern, you can't do that much damage, maybe, depending. And if you're a CFO, you can do a lot of damage. So the checks need to be, I think, but it's just like you said, it's just like we have a kind of new insider threat showing up, right?
Yeah.
And,
the cost of surveillance is significantly lower than it used to be.
yeah. Other questions? Shoshana, stand up.
Thank you so much for coming out. We ended today rather, on the future, but as an AI security researcher, it feels a lot like I'm living in the past. Because my paper on operationalizing security came out in 2022 prior to ChatGPT, also covering information warfare. This was based on 10 years of security research. So, we hear leaders all the time speaking about, as you said, it feels as if things are changing so quickly that you cannot get a handle on it. But for many of us, these problems remain the same. The vectors are the same, the mitigations have not changed. So my question to you is, how can we as AI security researchers bridge this gap? Number one, to sort of decrease your workload and anxiety, and number two, to make sure that the AI systems are themselves secure. How can we communicate this better? And what steps can we take to make this work better for leaders?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I
So-
appreciate that.
So it's a great point. I spend quite a bit of time with startups, right? And some on the stage have talked to you about their product sets. I think it's being able to take those passion, great idea, trying to understand what the world is, and then the capital markets, right, to help enable those things, and then having a place that you can actually try those out in real time, right? Pilots, maybe they're called. I think that's crucial. And what I find is just fascinating is how much I don't know. So I think that regular refreshing of what I don't know, and people tell me that all the time, and I don't know anything. But I think that listening to people and what they're doing, conferences like this, I think are super helpful. I don't know that there's a specific action other than keep going, and then engaging practitioners, engaging groups like this. I think it's key.
Yeah, I think if I think back to if I had access to this technology way back when I was an Intel practitioner, being able to do, like, we help a lot of clients with crisis simulation, tabletop exercise type of things, right? I mean, the ability to red cell some of these different types of threats, so kind of like the what if scenarios, and to be able to kind of put those in very realistic terms, so kind of over the horizon type of tactics that are being like put into practice, I think puts security research now on a much more predictive path, right? So you can actually gameplay out and going back and forth with a smart LLM, some of these different scenarios, and actually not only save a lot of money from an internal CISO standpoint, but also I think really kind of push the envelope of what the threat could do next and how could you potentially counter that.
Yeah, and I know we have to wrap up, but you got to keep doing what you're doing. Ken has to keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of evangelizing we have to do on the risks around AI. Like I think people just turn on Atlas, and you have called out very rightly. Like there's real challenges with just like turning on these agentic systems. I think there hasn't been, we're drinking the water all the time of like, oh my God, this prompt inject, blah blah blah. But like I think most folks, it's just like they're not even thinking about it, and I think until there's a holy shit moment, for lack of a better term, like a colonial pipeline or like ransomware, that's the thing we should worry about, I think it just hasn't hit the zeitgeist yet. So I think we just have to keep on yelling. And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to do some of this panel here is to, elucidate that there's so much potential, but there are risks. Anyone else want to say anything? Go ahead, Tom. And then we'll
Is
close out.
Katrina here, by the way?
Katrina?
Maybe? All right, I was supposed to meet Katrina here later today.
All right.
Thank you.
Katrina, if you're here, meet Tom. Well, thanks so much, guys. This was great. I just want to say, if you guys look to the left and to the right of you, I think you've got two vendors here who can solve some of your problems.
I thought you were going to say one of you won't be here.
No, you'll all be here. You'll all be
Probably both.
Maybe I won't, but thanks so much for the questions. Thanks for all the thoughtful responses, and I learned a lot just talking with you all, even though I've talked with you all before. So thanks for educating me, so to speak. So thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate it. Yeah.